Welcome to Captain Vic Framer. It's nice to see lots of people coming back again. If you haven't been before, thank you for coming. My name is Alex. It's Lydia with the camera. If you want to sign up to our newsletter, would like to buy anything, find out any more information, come talk to one of us at some point this evening. We do have coming up another event while Matt's exhibition is going on. It's a beer tasting. We're in conjunction with Double Barrel Brewery. There's some flyers dotted around if you're interested. That's going to happen on the 31st of May. Lastly, before we go on with the more interesting bits, if you enjoyed this evening, please give us a Google review. It's really helpful getting our name out there so we can carry on doing more events like this. So this is Matt Emmett. He's made all of these wonderful photographs, really interesting stories behind all of them. So Matt's going to introduce himself, how he got into this, and some more information about his pictures.
Cool. Can everyone see the screen? Okay. So I was asked to sort of do a short 20-minute presentation, and I was thinking, what can I do it on? I do talk to editor, photographic clubs and camera clubs, and that's normally a 2-hour talk, so I had to condense it somewhat. And I thought, what can I fit into a 20-minute talk? And I decided out of the 240 odd locations I've shot over the last 12 years, I would decide to pick out my top 5 favourite locations, just do a photo essay and a bit of background info on those 5 locations. But before we go on to the 5, I'll just talk a little bit about how I got into photography. So back when I was 19 years old, my father, who was into photography himself, this is back in the 1980s, he bought me the camera that he bought me a second-hand Pentax ME Super. And I was about to go travelling at the time to Indonesia and Thailand and Malaysia and places like that. And this is a shot of me in Flores in Indonesia. Obviously I didn't take this photo, but this was my introduction to photography. This was all shot using slide film, so projected onto the walls when we got home. These were obviously all scans. So these are various shots. So Sadhu in India, the novice monks in the orange robes in Thailand, Sukhothai, me and travelling companion on the Mekong River in Laos, baby on the deck of a boat in Mandalay in Burma, the blue city of Jodhpur and Jaipur in India, bottom right. Probably my favourite shot from those early travels is the top left, which is, I call that one Shortcut. It's a boy taking a shortcut in the desert city of Jaisalmer in India. Children playing, below that, children playing on the banks of the Irrawaddy River in Burma. Some more novice monks, some very young monks in Cambodia and Burma. And then a silhouette of a girl on the beach in Koh Samui in Thailand. And so very early on I thought I was going to do travel photography. I came back from those several trips away and thought, this is what I want to do. I want to work for Lonely Planet or Rough Guide. That didn't happen. I met somebody and we started a family, and the photography took a back seat for a while. Until about 2011, a friend of mine bought his first digital camera. And he said, you've been into photography for a while, give me a few lessons. And we did the first one in his back garden, took pictures of rose bushes and things like that. And I said, was that useful? And he said, yeah, I think maybe if you do another couple of lessons, maybe if we go somewhere with a bit more interest, I'll learn a bit more that way. So if you're happy to do another lesson. And a few months later he came back to me and said, I found this location down in Fleet in Hampshire. I said, right, it's a big industrial complex. And I said, okay. And he said, I said, you're allowed to go in there? And he said, technically not, no. I said, right. He said, well, give me some more info. He said, it's a place that used to test jet engines. It's called the National Gas Turbine Establishment. And I said, so you're not, he said, you have to climb over the fence. I said, well, is there anyone there? He said, well, there's security that drive around the site every 40 minutes or so, but apparently you can hear the vehicle coming and you can get off the road. I said, Mark, I don't want to do it. I don't want to get arrested. So we found, eventually, so he knew I liked sci-fi films, Blade Runner, Alien, and he said, just look at the pictures online, search for the NGTE or Pi stock, and then tell me you don't want to do it. So I looked at the pictures, and it looked like you'd walked onto an alien spacecraft. It looked like a film set for a sci-fi film. So we found ourselves at this fence line very early in 2012. You can see the signs here, trespassers will be prosecuted, dangerous site kicked out. And literally my heart was beating out my chest at that fence line. I was like, I don't want to do this, Mark. And he said, come on. And I handed my bag to him. We climbed over the fence and made our way up through the trees. So this is the site seen from Google. It was huge. It was like a small town. And all of the buildings here had a purpose. They all ran a service that, most of the buildings here provided a service to one of the other buildings. And effectively, it's one very large machine. And all of the buildings work together to test jet engines at the correct airspeed, at the correct air pressure. So this is cell 4, one of the larger buildings here. This was, most of the test cells here were built to test military jet engines. This was the only one that was built for commercial purpose. This was built to test the Olympus engines of Concorde. I think it was built in 1963. Another shot of cell 4, looking across from the air intake in the outer wall of the building. Some other shots, and shot cell 4 on the left, one of the gauges in the turbine hall, one of the control panels. This is cell 1, so this is one of the earliest test cells on site. This is cell 1 and 2 were built at the same time, 1953. And do you know Frank Whittle, who was the godfather of the jet engine? When his project was nationalised and taken off of him, he had a nervous breakdown over the fact that the British government took his project off of him. Postdoc is the site that grew off the back of Frank Whittle's work, and this was one of the earliest jet engine test cells on site. So there's a few places in the world, when you look up and you see the condensation trails crossing the sky from modern jet engines, Postdoc, a place in Germany and a place in Langley in America are the 3 sites that are responsible for the development of the jet engine. This was the anechoic chambers, and this was noise testing on site. When in use, was one of the largest anechoic chambers in Europe. And these shots here looking back through the exhaust collector back towards the main anechoic chamber. And these shots of the anechoic weren't taken in 2012, they were taken in 2015. And I revisited the site after a 3-year gap, after some people in the photography community said, oh, you know that you can now access the anechoic chamber. So I went back and took pictures, and that was finally my victory pose. After years of that one building that I didn't get into in 2012, finally completing the jigsaw, as it were. So that's just how I got into it. It was that site that was responsible for getting me into shooting that kind of historic locations with some history to them. But these are my top 5 locations now. So at number 5, I put them in order. This is a rather small location in Wales, in Llanelli in South Wales. And it's a location that I've wanted to do for quite a few years, but it's a long way to travel. It's a good 3-hour drive from Reading. And this window here, which is the access point, I've heard is sometimes completely sealed up, something nailed a board across it. So I didn't really want to turn up after a long drive and find you couldn't get in. And we were on a camping trip to Hereford, and I realised literally while we were there that I was about an hour's drive away. And I said to my other half, do you mind if I get up super early tomorrow morning and go off in the car? And got there and the window was open. So it's a chapel that was largely responsible. There's a few chapels in South Wales that kick-started the Welsh Revival in 1904 and 1905. And this was one of the chapels that was responsible for the Welsh Revival. So this is up on the balcony looking sideways at one of the windows. That's the organ end of the chapel. And you can see a lot of the damage that's occurred. While I was in here, it smelled heavily of pigeon poo, and all you could hear was the cooing of pigeons above. And then a shot from the balcony looking back. And actually, this is a weird effect you sometimes get in buildings. The interior actually looks quite big. The outside of the building, it doesn't look like it would contain all that space inside, but it's a bit of an optical illusion. That was number 5. Number 4, Palace Boskowie in Poland. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation for Polish. It's a 15th century castle. There's quite a lot of castles in Poland that are just in a derelict state. It has a custodian, it has people that are looking after it. We tried to get into several. We went on a trip specifically, other locations as well, but specifically to shoot these palaces. And the first one we went to, they just wouldn't let us in. We were told you could bribe the gardener. The guy we found him on his sit-on lawnmower, driving around the grounds. He just said no, no, no. We even offered him large sums of money. He said no. But this was on the second day. We got there. The guy met us. We had his number. He met us on the lawn, and he locked us in. He basically said, "How long do you want?" We said 3 hours. I said, "How long do most people have?" 3 hours. And he gave us a quick tour. It was huge inside, and we said, "I think we're going to need longer. How about 5 hours?" So he basically locked it. He said, get your water from the car. And he locked the doors, and me and Lex at the time, we just looked at each other, couldn't believe we were being left alone in such an incredible building. So this is one of the main staircases in the building. That's the same staircase, so that's looking into the light, so you get this very contrasty look to the photo. And then the next shot is on that landing up there, looking back down those stairs and then up to the upper level. So if you just to the right here is the carriage house. So there's one end of the building, there's these large arched doors where the carriages, when they had functions and parties at the castle, carriages would come in, people would get down, would disembark, come through the doors and then up the main staircase into one of the main sort of like ballrooms in the castle, which I've got a picture of in there. That's the top of the staircase looking back. It's undergoing some repair work at the moment, but it's a huge building. A private company owns it, but yeah, it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time to repair the castle. That's one of the better rooms in the castle. That's one of the function rooms or the ballrooms, and that's the attic space at the very top. I've got loads of pictures of these buildings, but just for the sheer convenience of a 20-minute presentation, I've had to just pick and choose just a few. Reading Jail, so I thought I'd include something local. I tried to get into Reading Jail on numerous occasions. I would literally go up to the doors and press the bell. Since 2013, when it was last in use, I would literally go up and somebody would come and say, "You see that camera on the pole up there? If I let you in and somebody sees me let you in, I lose my job, so I can't do it." And I was stood by a football pitch over at Clayfield Copse, watching my son play football, and I was introduced. Does anyone know Caroline Gratrix? So Caroline introduced me to somebody, and she said, "Oh, maybe you could help Matt get access to Reading Jail," because he knew one of the members of security staff there. And he put me in touch, and it wasn't long before I basically got 2 nights in there. So this is just a shot within the outer wall. Obviously, the main jail is a separate building that's contained within the outer walls. The security office is built into the outer wall. So it's great. They just gave me free rein. He walked around with me at first and said, "Do you need me to stay with you?" I said, "Just go back to the office. It's fine." He came and checked on me every now and then, but so just a few shots from the outside of the building. That's C wing, which is the one that Oscar Wilde is in a cell just up here. So this is with the lights on. The one thing that happened when he left me, I said, "Do you mind if show me where the light switches are?" And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I want to turn the lights off." And he said, "Well, don't you need the lights on to take pictures?" I said, "Not necessarily, no. The pictures will look a lot better if I do really long exposures and just use the light coming in from outside the jail." So this is with the lights on. So this is a shot of, this is A wing. This is through this window, the new developments, the new flats that are just going up are just outside that window. And the bank is over on the curved wall just round here. So this is with the lights on, but you can see the difference between how that window looks with the lights on and once the lights get turned off. So it just looks so much better. It's just flooded with light. So that's obviously from a little bit further back as well. So what we've got here is orange on the ceiling is the street lights outside coming up from below and painting the ceiling white. And these red lights here are from the cranes. The red lights on the other side of the cranes coming down. I was a bit nervous about publishing these images because technically the security had let me in and they shouldn't have. And I was a bit concerned that by publishing them that the security staff could have got in trouble with the Ministry of Justice. But they don't own it anymore, so I think it's fine now. This is directly below that last shot on the first floor. This is C wing, the Oscar Wilde wing, but on the top floor with the lights on the floor below. One of the cells, one of the doors. You can see the blade. Is it the blade? Is it the blade?
Yeah.
And that's so very quickly. Some of you may know how this was taken already. When I set this shot up, it was virtually pitch black in front of me. There was a bit of an orange glow from the streetlights outside at the far end. So I set the camera up and basically I've got some portable lights. I illuminated the scene so I could set my focus point on part of the stairs here. And then I turned the light off and I started the exposure. And it's about a 2-minute exposure. So when it looked pitch black, but across a 2-minute exposure, so up here I could see a very dim amount of green. So in this thing here, there was a small green bulb. And there's somebody that works at the prison that's seen this picture has said, all of the different colours, he knows what all of those colour bulbs mean. Some of them are just saying, yes, there's electricity running through this panel, some of them are alarm panels. And over a 2-minute exposure, this very, very dim glow of green that I could see has grown in intensity, and that's what happens with long exposures. what you see is not what the camera will see. The longer the exposure, the brighter everything gets. So that was a real eureka moment. The shot that popped up at the back of the camera was like, wow, I can't believe that. Crossness pumping station, so this isn't an abandoned location, you can actually visit this. I started off shooting abandoned locations, but over time, I do a little bit of work with the National Trust, people like that, and if I'm sneaking into places, potentially that's going to cause me trouble with people like the National Trust. They're not going to be too happy with me for trespassing, as it were. So, over time, my work has changed from shooting abandoned locations to more sort of historic locations. Crossness Pumping Station is a place you can visit on open days. It's it's in my top 5, it's one of the most impressive historic buildings I think I've ever been in. It was built just after the Great Stink in 1858 to alleviate the sewage problems in central London, to bring the sewage away from the city and then pump it into the Thames, a part of the Thames where it wasn't so populated. And it's Victorian engineering, isn't it? It's just the amount of effort they put into something that really wasn't designed to be seen by the general public. This is the octagon in the centre of the building. Again, another shot of the octagon, but also some of the beam engines. There's 4 beam engines there. The really nice thing about Crossness is, since the 1970s, they've had a team of engineer enthusiasts, people who've retired generally. They've taken over restoring Crossness to its former glory. But one of the nice things is, on half of the building, they've left it in the state they found it when they started restoring in the 1970s. It was derelict for decades. Part of the building is just covered in rust. So they've restored and repainted half of it and left the other half how it was. So you can see how it was in its derelict state as well. Triple pump steam engine room, it's part of a separate wing in the building, and one of the ornate doorways leading into the main building. Some of the pumps in the triple pump steam engine room, and just some of the intricate ironwork in the main building. Crank handle, which started one of the flywheels that ran the beam engines. So apparently this is the king, when Crossness was opened, the king basically pulled that lever there and started up the beam engines, and one of the fluid gauges on one of the big tanks there. And finally, this is in the rusty half of the building, 2 of the flywheels. So I think Crossness was that my number 3, so I think it might be number 1 now. So yeah, I think Stack Rock is my favourite historic abandoned building I've shot. Stack Rock Fort is out in the waterway just off of Milford Haven in South Wales. Back in sort of the time when the UK was worrying the whole time about invasion from France. So you had not Napoleon Bonaparte, but his nephew Napoleon was in power in France, and there was a lot of threat, and the UK government felt we was about to suffer an invasion. And Lord Palmerston was an ex-PM that had recently stopped being Prime Minister. He headed the Palmerston Commission, and they decided that they were so concerned about the threat of invasion that they were going to upgrade a lot of Britain's coastal defences. And there was originally a fort here, which was a Martello fort on some rocks here, and they decided to upgrade this to a much bigger defensive fort on the rocks here. So Stack Rock Fort grew off the back of the Palmerston Commission, which I think was the most expensive military upgrade during peacetime in the UK, and it was never used. So just a few shots, a drone shot, and then at low tide, when the tide's out, you can actually climb out to the rocks next to it. At high tide, the water's up level with the fort here. That's from part of the outer ring looking. So this was the Martello fort that was in the centre of that was built around when they upgraded it. One of the many views taken around the fort. Officers' quarters on the left, and this is part of the defensive batteries that run around the edge of the fort. So these semicircular areas where the cannons would be aimed out the windows, and these were like the turning circles for the cannons. Alignment of the doorways near the officers' quarters. This is another one you can visit. So if you're in this is an amazing day out, truly breathtaking. The fort is huge. It's got about 4 floors. You've got the roof and then 3 floors. It's got a basement floor as well below sea level, and it takes about 3 hours to explore the whole thing. I think they charge about £50–60. you get 10 hours at the fort because you arrive at high tide and they only pick you up again at the end of the day at the other high tide. So you're there for the day, they cook you, there's a barbecue there, they'll cook you food, but really it's the most incredible day out. I highly recommend it. Just a couple of you've got one of the rings hanging off the ceiling in the battery area, which I guess is where they loaded some of the cannons from. And this is down in the shell stores in the basement where they lifted the live shells back up to the cannons. And this is part of the winding gear, and you can see the sea air over the years, what happens to the ironwork. And this is just this was the engine room, the basement in the centre of the fort. I think. So, yep, that's the end of the 5 locations, but if you were interested, I have a book available, came out in 2016, and available on Amazon. And thank you very much for listening.